If you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Hi everyone, what's up? Welcome to part 2 of my Alien RPG Colonial Marines Section 2 History. That quote was from Sun Tzu, and this is what begins the part 2 section of the book. So it talks about, after that little introduction there, which obviously isn't a quote from the movie, but is a neat little quote nonetheless, and may I say, amazing artwork there with that spaceship blasting away from what looks like some moon or a planet that could be Mars. I know it's going towards a planet which looks like Earth, but obviously it wouldn't be, but that's just what it looks like. Amazing artwork though, amazing. So it talks about the 22nd century, so I'll just read the first section to give you a little inkling on what is in store for you in this section of history for the Colonial Marines book. The 22nd century has seen massive population growth, prompting a search for new assets and the growth of nations in a time of limited resources. Usually means only one thing: war. Now, just time out a second there. So naturally they're looking for other worlds, which we would do eventually. Okay, moving on. While initially formed as a protector of worlds, nowadays the United States Colonial Marine Corps is more of a protector of assets. Companies such as Weyland-Yutani, Alpha Tech and newcomer Grant Corporation have invested much in the military, and as such have the luxury of calling in favours where a senator here or a colonel there, or the usual response: send a platoon with a CO who is easy to manipulate and a corporate advisor, in indented quotations there, to guide things. It wasn't always that way, however. There's a detailed history that showcases how the Corps evolved to what it is today and drives home just how much it is needed. Okay, so that pretty much sums up what happened to the guy, or the characters in Alien, the second Alien movie, or Aliens, I should say, the second Alien movie. The next section talks about what came before the Weyland era, so that's what that concentrates on. And the next page, you've got something called Growing Pains, which is essentially a sort of timeline. So it tells you from like the years 2098 to 2101. Tells you about that right up until 2006 to 2108. But if you turn the page, you've got a more detailed timeline. It is actually called a timeline, and it's, I don't know, akin to the sort of timelines you could get in certain other books, like tabletop gaming books such as Warhammer 40k, things like that. So like that gives you a very good, I would say the timeline is probably a key point that you would look as a GM running a game. So you would probably need to come back to sort, if it was me running the game, that's definitely an area I would bookmark, and because I'd be thinking of every new element or nuance to the game that is introduced, I would come back to that, make sure it still is in keeping with that section of the timeline. It goes up to 2181. Moving on, the 20 parsec limit. Traffic and communication with several long-distance spinward colonies is inexplicably severed. Several attempts to reach them are interrupted by massive solar ejections and radiation bursts. Soon the Trailward, Covenant and Affiance colony missions are also declared overdue. Only the Rimwood Cordant mission to the Hades cluster is successful, establishing a network of mining colonies for Hyperdyne systems. That's kind of a bit what comes next, so it gives you more timelines, so to speak. Not one that goes across in a straight line, it just details the actual sections. And then we've got the problem with androids, which is quite neat. I'll read that because that plays an integral part of the game. Weyland-Yutani's upgraded David-style android Walter had proved to be extremely popular in the early 22nd century. It was, however, somewhat cost prohibitive as the original Weyland Corporation patent on androids finally runs out. Other companies scramble to make their own. So, talking a lot of companies are rushing to make artificial human beings, basically. The next section, biological warfare, talks about that. The next section, you want to talk about conspiracies. Okay, you've got Hadley's Hope and you've got the Rim, right? Both shit colonies on the edge of nowhere, both making nothing but air and both full of wildcatters looking to strike it big. Both stop transmitting, both have the Marines sent in, and both go up in a nuclear blast. But that's none of my business. That's something that says overheard in the Eye of Oblivion bar. Ariarchus. These little snippets are little backdrops of lore which are awesome. Absolutely awesome. Creates depth to your game. And we're on the core conflict, where it talks about all things from the revolt of Alexandria to the repercussions, the populist movement. Next page, the Acturian police actions, talks about that. Page after that, the battle for the Chinese arm. So we're looking at areas now. What are we up to? We're up to 2162 to 2165. Still on a timeline. Then we move to the victor, the spoiled, then the Rimwood expansion. So these are all areas that can be awesome points to your game. And it talks about the hunting of bugs. The prevalent form of life in the cosmos would appear to be insects, both small and large. And when cockroaches the size of poodles start chewing on colonies or colonists, you can guess who gets called in to play exterminator. It's a duty that no Marine wants, but every Marine gets stuck with. Over the years, this kind of work has become synonymous with the term bug hunt. As rebel factions make up the most commonly faced and annoying human adversaries on the frontier as well, bug hunt can also apply to flushing out entrenched hostiles, as opposed to a straight up fight of soldier versus soldier. We're then graced with another beautiful piece of artwork where we've got a couple of soldiers there, one bending down to a possible fallen soldier trying to retrieve something. I would look by the looks of it. Looks like the light's shining down on him from probably the opening of some spaceship or transport. It's difficult to tell, but I like these sorts of pictures because it lets the mind wander and the imagination fill in the gaps. Next page is the war at home, the fanatical frontier. Talks about that, and then we're on to the Cold War intensifies and the frontier war. And then we've got a George Orwell quote: "If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever." That's something to think about. Not unlike today. And that is the last page of section 2's history. If you want to read through that, I would say it's essential to read that before playing any game of Alien, really. And I'm glad we now have that. So that's it. That's section 2 history. And the next section will be on organisation, and we will be graced with a quote from one of the movies at that point. But that's it. That's history, Alien, and role-playing game, Colonial Marines Operations Manual. Thank you very much for joining me on this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you dislike it, share, and check out my Patreon if you have a mind to do so. It really helps me out big time, keeps the lights on, literally. Thank you again, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now, folks. Bye bye.